Good day. Hi, this is Russell Hendrickson. I'm the CEO at Practical Data Solutions. Thank you for joining us. Joining me today for today's webinar is Scott Everett.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
This is a dashboard we featured several months back that looks at the change of reporting from sort of traditional office visits to telehealth and telephone. And I think back at the time we did this, Scott, you and I were thinking that things would have calmed down and we'd be back to having office visits. We weren't even sure if Medicare was going to continue reimbursing for telehealth. But it's just one example of a dashboard with some graphics and icons. And you'll see quite a few in today's webinar here.
Yeah, so if you look at something like this, you can see how, the use of color and flow and just kind of grabbing the user's attention can really be kind of a big deal in getting people to consume the information that's coming through in the dashboard, and really trying to make the dashboards graphical, give them the ability to quickly notice trends and indicators that are out there is really kind of the goal of what you're seeking in a dashboard. But what really impresses people is to find out that all of this is done in Excel.
Yeah, I've been doing demonstrations and showing our dashboards for years. And what people always say, just heard it again about a week ago, I can't believe what you're showing is Excel. How are you doing that in Excel? Isn't that some web-based tool? The reality is we as a business, our country, even globally, Excel, is over 30 years old, so it's a proven tool. It's been updated, but by and large, the core functionality remains the same. Estimated to be used by over 750 million people worldwide, so it certainly has acceptance.
Yeah, well, and even when you look at it, even organizations that have these big business tools, these analytical tools that are out there, at the end of the day, if you're looking at KPI reports, if you're looking at financial statements, most of the time that's coming to the executive leadership in Excel. It's put together that way. And when you work in these applications that are out there, you can do lots of great analytical work in these tools, but at the end of the day, when you design your report, there's still a button right there that says save copy to Excel. And I think they understand that a lot of times for distribution purposes and licensing purposes, that's going to be the most efficient for large organizations.
Yeah, I think especially in healthcare in particular, we also see that Excel licenses, just the licensing alone, run 10% of the more expensive analytical software tools. I mean, the reality is if you need to build out a dashboard, if you need to publish something out, if you need to put something together, you can do it yourself. You can do it very quickly, and you can pull data down. So let's explore just a little more as to why Excel is so popular, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges from there.
Yeah, so when I was researching this for this webinar, I came across an article by Ann Walsh in Surviving in an Excel World. And the fact of the matter is we talked about the accessibility of Excel and how widely used it is. And if you're looking for a quick turnaround, Excel is really the tool that you want. People use it, people understand it. It's very flexible in terms of layout, calculations, things like that. And as far as knowledge of how to use it, it's required coursework in my kids' high school now. They can't graduate without knowing how to use Excel. And so people are coming out of high school and college. You don't have to spend a lot of time training people on how to use Excel. It's really a great tool for, again, that quick turnaround purposes that are out there.
Yeah, I think there's so much data today too. Excel often is already installed on your desktop. You can grab data from any application. You can pull data right off the internet and just start working with it within Excel. And then I would say the fifth reason that this author talks about is that it's easy to get help outside of even what Microsoft offers. You can pretty much go into Google and find a function or a website or somebody who's sharing exactly what you're trying to do and can guide you through how to do it. So the question is, with all these people using it, with all this going for it, why is Excel often dismissed? And one author talked about you can't live with it, you can't live without it, because there are some challenges. To me, in particular, one of the biggest challenges is there's your data. It just sits there. It's not exactly exciting, but it's just sitting there. So you could make it interactive. We've talked about that. But, the newer tools, newer technology is a lot more exciting. So what are some of the pros and cons of presenting data with Excel?
When we're talking about Excel, we talked about really, we can only say it so many times. Everybody has it. Everybody knows how to use it. I can do it myself. I can do it quickly. I can lay it out how I want. I can use the calculations that I want. And you know what? If it's a bigger project, if it's something that are going to have a lot of people on it, you can do it together. You can do it with lots of people at one time. So there really are a lot of pros for using Excel.
Yeah, and I think what we really want to try to do today is talk about how we're going to address some of the cons and how can we make Excel more powerful. And so one of the ways we thought we might do that today was to illustrate what we see typically happens, certainly in healthcare. So, Scott, I'm going to play your boss today. I just play it on television. I don't play it in real life. Oh, wait, I guess maybe I do. But in any case, I might come to you, which actually I do this periodically too, don't I? And say, build me a new dashboard. That's something that goes on here at PDS all the time. Let's take the example, build me a dashboard. I need productivity and scheduling metrics. I need to show performance trends. I want to integrate some target data. Of course, I want to see it graphically, try to make it so I can understand what's going on in our healthcare organization. Oh, and I need it yesterday. So where are you going to start with this request?
Okay, so obviously when I look at that, I know a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools out there. I'm familiar and pretty good with all of them. I could build this in most of those tools, provided I had the licensing, provided I had the training, provided I had the data staged the way that I need it and the tool was set up the right way. And I could give you a nice looking web-based visual dashboard that comes from something like this. But a couple of things that might be constraints is, do you have the licensing to open it? And the speed that you're looking at, fact of the matter is I'd probably just go ahead and start it off in Excel. Now, if I'm looking in Excel and the beginning process that you see, obviously I'm not going to stop here, but this is a way you start sketching it out. You start laying it out, saying this is what I want, this is what you've asked for. You can make it a little bit better with something like this. This is fine. You've got the trends, you've got the status indicators that help out. It's still not great. You make it a little bit better maybe by adding some additional graphical pieces down at the bottom, maybe adding a few more months. Your trends are still there. But I think in the end, this is not really the goal of what we're looking for. If we want it highly graphical, we want it to capture people's attention, what we want to do is something like this, where I'm going to focus on the metrics, just the metrics that you asked for. I'm going to present them graphically, and I'm going to give you trends and let you know right away, here's where we're doing well, here's where we're struggling a little bit, so that you as an executive can just make a snap judgment within about 30 seconds of looking at this dashboard to say, okay, here's where I need to focus my attention. So this is probably the end result of what I would give in a project of what you just asked for.
And I bet you'd be feeling pretty good about yourself, wouldn't you, at this point? You
I always do.
You did it quickly, right? And what does every good boss do, right? This is what happens more often than not. This is great, Scott, but guess what? I need more metrics. I need you to integrate some clinical quality data. I need some general ledger data. Oh yeah, somewhere we have our patient satisfaction data. I need this built out by department now with different specialty benchmarks by department. I want to give this to the departments. I need you to figure out how to cut it up and give each physician their data and only their data. And I need it, weekly. You know what? Things just change again with COVID. We're changing how we're seeing patients and visits. I need this daily now. So just take that beautiful thing you built. What's the big deal? Just add some data and make it work for me.
You won't see me do it on a webcam, on a GoToMeeting call or a Zoom call or anything, panic about it. But as soon as we hang up, I'm running down the hall screaming because you just changed everything. And you made it really difficult. These external data sources that are there, they don't even have the same names as a provider and the ones that we're using now. You want to integrate external data like benchmarks and targets. You want me to cut it up and give it to each individual department and physician and only give them their data. That's going to require a whole lot of manual work and security that I'm going to have to put in. And then you want it on a daily basis. It may take me a week to do these each time. I don't know how I can deliver it daily. So yeah, everything has just changed. You've just created the Excel monster that's there. And it really, things can get out of hand really quickly when people start asking for more after successes that you've found.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the typical problem, right? So you've got this monster that it started off as a great project. You built it. It looked beautiful. But now we've got some real challenges. And this is where somebody would say, well, we should just go web. but we still have data staging challenges. And we still have the issue of we need it done quickly and we need it done cost effectively, right? So we don't have time to go out and start learning new tools in many cases, especially with what, some of the reactions we've had to deal with COVID. So let's break down some of those challenges. There again, a little more, nothing else to do thanks to the pandemic. Let's break down those challenges though and talk about and categorize some of the things. So we're challenged with refreshing the data periodically as well as enhancing the data. So bringing in more metrics and modifying what we built. We're also challenged with security, and we'll talk about security, but what I mean by that is how do we make sure the right people can only see their data? And how also do we make these things so there's no macros or VB code or something that might actually cause an IT security issue that I can't work with? So we'll talk about that.
We also want to talk about supportability, because these days you never know when someone's going to have to call in sick or be quarantined or be out. And if we're running this daily, that means someone else is going to have to know how to do this. So it's not something that you can just have one person knowing how to do. We need to be able to support that. And of course, when you talk about cutting it up at a provider level, that'd be difficult with 50 providers. If you've got 200 providers, 500 providers, 1,000 providers, all of a sudden distribution is going to become a key issue as well. So when you came back to me and said, this is what I need to do, I realized right away there's probably a problem with the design. Because the way I would have designed it initially is I'd have taken all of the data, since I only had to do it one time, and I'd have put it back behind, laid the presentation on top of the data sitting in the background there. And for those of you who do it this way, I think best practice recommendation right now is don't do it that way. The data in the presentation, you're going to make your life a lot easier and everybody else's life a lot easier if you separate them out. Put the data in the background and link the presentation levels to it. Now, what this is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to report at different levels. It's going to allow you to do modifications and do insertions much more easily than if you just had to have it sitting there with a sheet on top of a bunch of underlying data sources that are out there. So separating that data out, staging first, and then presenting second is going to be your best bet for how you want to do design work.
It's interesting. We've been recommending and designing dashboards that way probably over 15 years. But an interesting article, Separate Data Analysis and Presentation in Excel Data Models, it talks about the fact that if you were using a traditional data warehouse, you would never think about integrating the visualization into the sort of data, right? You'd have to have separate data structured from your database into your presentation tool. So when you're working with Excel, why aren't you working the same way? So this author here, sounds obvious, but Excel users often fuse data analysis and presentation. They just put them all together like you did. And the challenge is that doesn't allow for design enhancements or changes, right? Because now you've got to redesign your data before you can even get to thinking about your presentation. So really makes good sense there. Moving on, let's talk just a little bit about security. I mentioned this before. How are we going to handle things? We can't use macros or VB code. They used to be very popular at one point. If you had a VB programmer, you were good with it, you could sort of write some of your own code and you could do all kinds of things in Excel. Yeah, not anymore, primarily because IT won't let you. They'll lock it down, too many spam and things coming through the mail. So those are challenges. Hiding or locking data. So if we start to send out data to different doctors, do we really want to have another doctor's data in the same worksheet, even if it's locked or hidden? What if they see it? What if they find out? What if the different departments find out about budgets or something that they shouldn't be? And then, of course, if anybody's ever worked with linking sheets, right, what's the big challenge is, well, it works great when you open it up, on your desktop or on the network, but as soon as you email that sheet out to somebody, your linked sheets don't work, your data doesn't refresh, and you get calls and support issues. So how are we going to handle some of the security challenges, Scott?
Yeah, so a recommendation I make every time I talk to a new client is take the macros out. You don't want them. They're going to make everything more difficult, from distribution to security to supportability. If you pass that on to someone else, are they going to be able to support those macros that are in place? It just makes it a little more difficult. So if you can avoid that either formulaically or through other ways of doing things, that really is going to be the best for everybody involved. I know this is going to not be a favorite for some people to hear about copying and pasting. because it does involve a lot more manual work and it does open yourself up to a little bit more in the way of user error. But copying, pasting when you're working with confidential data is going to be your best bet or your most secure bet for doing that, to make sure that people aren't getting data that they shouldn't be seeing. There's a better way we'll talk about later on, but for right now, I would say copying and pasting is how you want to do that. And linking to external sheets is, again, not necessarily the best way from a security or supportability standpoint as far as getting data to refresh. So ideally, what you want to do is have everything going on in the background of each individual report. Supportability, you talked about it perfectly above, Russ, when we talked about you gave me the project, I worked with it, designed it, gave you what you wanted, but in the change when it comes, other people are going to have to do this because you may have me off working on a different project right away, and you just want to pass that off to another analyst or someone else on the support staff. And so we want to be able to make it so that multiple people can work on it as they need to. And then we want to be able to make it easy to be modified, because change is coming, and it's coming quickly in our environment today. We've had clients talk to us all the time, Russ, about having to make quick changes on the fly of the way that they do things and having to integrate new and different metrics this year with the pandemic. And so you want to be able to make sure that you can easily modify your current structure rather than having to go back and completely redesign everything.
So let's talk about some of these categories. We're trying to give you good suggestions as to how to work within Excel using Excel. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is the PDS tool Dash. And PDS tool Dash is a second generation tool that originated with us helping organizations, healthcare organizations, build dashboards and publish data through Excel to make it visual. And so Dash has some core features in it that are designed to make it easy to address things like bursting sheets, blending data, and separating your presentation from your data sources. So let's just talk a little bit more about that in particular. It's a standardized process, and it's both a standardized process where you can continue to bring in data, but it also makes it easy to map data from different sources. So we talked about if we don't have data in our warehouse, we don't have a structure to join our cost centers to our departments, to our physicians, or other data sources that might be integral to what we're trying to build. So Dash is designed to handle that in a standardized process. Inherently, and I'll show you this on the screen, it separates the visualization layer from the data layer right in the application and in the structural design of the tool. So what that does is it makes making changes easy. You can literally go in and change the colors of a chart or a graph or add graphics or anything without having any impact on your data or your source sheets. And then Security Dash handles linking worksheets are not required. You don't need macros. You don't need VB. It can what they call burst data or cut up data, get it ready to be separated. And there's no sort of confidential data or hidden data that you have to worry about locking down from different users where they shouldn't see. So it's a very clean process. And finally, from a supportability side, because it is a standardized process and we train customers, everybody in the organization, if somebody is out, somebody goes on maternity leave or something, you have the option easily to sort of see how their project works and then continue to build on that project as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at Dash. I'm going to just shut off my camera here so you can get a better view of the screen. In addition, then you can see all the data source sheets right here across the page. So these are all different sources, and there's got to be almost 20 different data sources that we're going to blend into building out the physician dashboard. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of how that works, but I do want to show you one key feature here in the Dash design. So what you're looking at here is I just clicked on Run Project, and there's built out here, it's going to run 104 dashboards. Now, I probably won't run all of them while we're doing the webinar here because it might take a few minutes to do. But what you see here is Dash is now building out, and the first thing it's going to do is going to do validation check. It's actually opening all the data sources. It's making sure that it can get to every single spreadsheet that it needs. It's running a check across the project to basically say, can I blend the data? Can I join the data? Oh, look at that. It's already building out dashboards. So if I go to the output directory, what you can see right here on the screen is it's building out the dashboards. And so it's literally blending about 20 different data sheets, merging that into the visualization sheet, the template, and then it's saving them out. So there's no manual errors, there's no manual cut and paste, and it's literally just crunching through the data here, as you can see, and it's running fairly quickly. So with that, I'm gonna stop it here because I think we ran more than a few. But you could see, it would run. Now I'm running this on a PC just to share. So it was running, I don't know, about 20 dashboards a minute. But on a server, obviously, and in a large organization, we do have organizations using this that are 20 physicians, and we have organizations that are using this that are 5,000 physicians. So it is fully scalable. But if I just go ahead and open up a couple different dashboards, I want to show you the end result. First off, because we designed the visualization, we can have one master template, if you will, that shows the same look for all the different physicians. You can see there's a dashboard for Mike Allen. Here's a dashboard for Charles Anderson. And you do have different data. You can see this is a KPI dashboard. Charles Anderson, he's got 3 months, red, green. You can see this physician here doing a little different. Okay. In addition, though, we can design dashboards that have multiple pages. We've got our lined up color schemes. We can blend appointment data with patient satisfaction data, or have coding with benchmarks, divisions, even down to procedure-specific detail. We've got a lot of flexibility through Excel. And we can even build in a glossary or who to call if you need help right into our dashboard. So very flexible, and that's where Dash is really addressing some of those challenges, which is how do we make it easy to handle security, distribution, supportability. Those are all key parts of why Dash works. Let's talk about designing dashboards for a minute though, Scott.
Yeah, so when you look at something like that and that tool that makes the automation piece so easy, that's something that really is great when I can integrate stuff from different data sources. I don't have to worry about the names being the same. I don't have to worry about cutting it up and distributing it and things like that. I can focus everything on design. And again, when we look at design, depending upon your organization, you may have a great analytical tool or a web-based tool that does visualizations out there. And you can do a lot of this in there, but sometimes Excel really is a great way to sketch it out first or design it out first. And the way you would do that is you want to just feel like designing something in Excel is the same as designing it in Tableau or MicroStrategy or IBM Cognos or any of these other analytics tools that are out there. And so the first tip I give you is think web. Think in my end goal, even if it's not your end goal, is what would it look like in the web? Let's design it that way to look that way in Excel. We always tell clients here, you have eyes, plagiarize. If you see other ideas, other dashboards, if you're at conferences, if you're at other organizations, if you're looking at PDS website, things like that, borrow ideas, find metrics that look good for you, find design ideas that look good and copy those and use them effectively where you can. Line up your data, get it in a way that, again, there's that color and there's that flow that users can look at. Focus on key data. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people use is trying to put too much into a dashboard. You can only focus on a handful of things at once. You can only manage to a handful of things at once. So find out what's most important in your organization. Focus on those data points. And then obviously you can talk about what are the best colors to use, white space, margins, things like that. Those are all kind of marketing things that your organization may have, but keep those in mind as well. But again, I'll go back to what I said before. At the end goal is you want managers, physicians, executives to be able to look at this and in 30 seconds be able to draw conclusions of where they're doing well and where they're struggling, and help them to be able to go in and figure out what they need to do to actually spend their time correcting the problems that are highlighted by the dashboard rather than trying to digest what's in the dashboard.
Yeah, and then I would say, we've actually have a webinar on this. I think we did one back in May. There was something similar back in March, but on how to design effective dashboards. And, the big thing is piloting with real data, tuning the dashboard, listening to users, getting feedback, right? So that your dashboards need that tuning. Read an article that said a typical dashboard will have 4 or 5 iterations before it really becomes stable. But one of the challenges, in particular within healthcare, and we've certainly seen it this year with the pandemic, is that what worked yesterday, how we were measuring things, how we were looking at patients and visits and volumes and even reimbursement, things have changed dramatically. And so your dashboards, your analytics have to change with them. If they're not dynamic and you don't have a process to manage that, it creates all kinds of challenges. And that's really what we're trying to do here today, is talk about how to use Excel, but use it in an effective way to handle change and make it more effective as we go. So The other thing, Scott mentioned borrowing ideas from others. Again, we've talked about this, and you've seen a lot of examples, but the different dashboards that you're seeing in this webinar, we have about 105 different dashboards in our dashboard library. Clients that subscribe or use PDS Dash have access to all these different design templates with the idea that you can take a design template, even if it's a different data set. It doesn't have anything to do with the metrics that we're showing, and easily revamp that through Excel to blend in and modify it to the kind of metrics that you want. So we're going to show you just a few more samples of things from the dashboard book and the designs to kind of reiterate some of the ideas. This is one of our newer dashboards that was designed around patient satisfaction reporting. And what I'd like to highlight here is there's really two things that we meant to jump out to the user. The physician is getting a rating of 91, and the team or the group is getting a rating of 65. You can kind of quickly see physicians doing a great job, the team not so good. And if you just glance right down the sides, right, you can start to pick up, we've got some challenges with staff, scheduling appointments, et cetera, right? So, as an example of a dashboard.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about when I was saying line things up, when I was talking about design, that this is a way, if you're going to incorporate maybe industry benchmarks or internal targets and goals, budgets maybe, that there is a way to put them in kind of a line rather than having some boring table. You can play with borders and fonts and trend indicators to make it much more visually appealing than just some charter table that's on an Excel sheet. This is another way of looking at things where if we're talking about thinking web, that this is something that captures the user's attention when you look at it immediately, that you have some nice graphics that you can look at, but there's then just one single metric for them to look at and see. We have some trends or graphical down below that can be incorporated as well, but this is something that, again, gives a nice web feel to a simple dashboard.
Yeah, the style here, I actually originally got the idea looking at my phone. I used a national bank, and I had logged in, and they had a little dashboard, and I looked at it, and they were using this sort of design because I could run the metrics down the page. So you could have 3 or 4 metrics or 6 metrics. By running them down the page, you could scroll right up on your phone. But very effective, because when you look at the metric, you can start to associate the metric with the measure. So nice, simple design as an example for trying to focus out users on what they need to see. And then even when you look at something that maybe needs to be a little bit more what I call traditional Excel, kind of a crosstab here, there's a couple design elements in this report where we're trying to show the potential opportunities. So we're doing some predictive metrics here, and we're trying to show the potential opportunity if the physicians improve their coding for patients that are high risk with HCCs. And so a couple design elements using colors for activity versus comparison versus the predictive part, the improved reimbursement. The other thing that I'll highlight is using little check marks to quickly identify which rows or which physicians we might want to pay particular interest to where they have the highest opportunities. So even when you need something that is a little more Excel traditional looking, with some design elements, you can be much more effective in how you present that data.
Yeah, and one thing I would say about this dashboard too as well, Russ, is when you look at it, this may be run by a department and you have the providers listed there. You may have 20 providers in cardiology, but 70 in internal medicine. So you have those variable rows. And I think it's good to point out Dash helps on taking care of that formatting piece as well.
Yes, Scott, you actually bring up an interesting challenge, because as we were preparing for the webinar and we didn't put this in, I was thinking, is there a way to delete rows for variable length dashboards? The only way I could think you could do it was maybe with a macro or some VB code, and for obvious reasons we took that out. The ability to have a tool that not only bursts data, but if you have 10 physicians in one department and 20 in another, it could make the report size up or down is a standardized process as part of the Dash tool. The other thing is, since we bursted data with a tool like Dash, or if you've done it manually, we do have a tool called Distributor that will both email out reports or push them to shared folders or network folders or into something like Microsoft SharePoint. A lot of organizations, for distributing data, if they don't have an application, they'll write batch files, which works pretty good, other than when you have physicians that come and go or add departments, or you integrate another organization, you got to go back to your coding versus having a standardized application. The other thing we do, if you don't have a tool like SharePoint or something like that, is we do have a web portal where you can post your dashboards, and then the tool can even use your Windows sign-on and we'll dictate which users can see what content. So it helps with the security of getting the right information into the hands of the right people. So those are a couple options that make Excel much more web-like and more like some of the other tools in the market, yet we're still leveraging Excel.
So if we want to talk a little bit about design best practices that are out there, I think we've hit on a key few today, especially talking about automation is really kind of the key of what you really want to get to. There's so much more efficiency that can be gained through automating your reports. And then good designs are critical as well. Make sure that they're adaptable to be changed. Make sure that they're simple to be changed, that add a row here, add a column there, add a chart here. Those are simple things to do in Excel, but you have to have a good design in order to be able to accommodate those, and you don't get a bunch of errors or things thrown off a little bit. And again, sketch it out first. Excel's a great tool even if you're using a web-based tool. Excel's great for sketching it out because it's just so easy to make those changes. And then you may have to do some redesign later on once you know what you want in order to make sure everything's optimized and make sure everything is looking good and making sure that people can navigate it. I've done dashboards before where I've had some pretty complex formulas in there that when I passed them on, people would have to come back and ask me what I was really trying to get to, and we'd work together to kind of re-optimize that. So once you're there, make sure you've got everything optimized the best it can do. And then, of course, PDS DASH solves a lot of these issues that are out there.
I think ultimately with COVID right now, you're seeing organizations, obviously, everybody's still running and trying to be as efficient as possible. And some of the challenges even in how we're working is really to try to gain productivity where we can, especially given sort of the changes in the climate and what we're working with. One of the other things we didn't talk about, but I always like to share, and this is in particular if you're a customer or if you're interested in learning more about PDS, but one of the ways that we make our clients successful with these tools is through ongoing training. And for any of our customers that are on the phone here, you can always go to our website if you're interested in taking a class or a workshop and you have to have the tools. We offer ongoing training on sort of all the things that we've talked about here today. And you can just sign up for a class. If you're not a PDS customer, this is just one of the many ways that we make sure our clients are effective with the tools and sort of all the resources that allow us to get our clients to be effective.
Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you spending some time with us, and I hope this was useful for you. If you have any questions that pop up or anyone from your organization would like to learn a little bit more, please feel free to contact us at our website, pds-online.com. And if you want to see more of our webinars, you can access those through the YouTube channel, which you can also access via our website.
Thank you so much for attending, and please do stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.